With that, I'd like to introduce Tammy Westcott, who is the director of really what's all treatment courts in the state of Oklahoma. I'd like you to start by saying exactly what is your title, Tammy?
Good morning. My title is the Director of the Criminal Justice Division for the state of Oklahoma in the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services Division.
That's a long
agency.
one.
It's very long.
But basically you coordinate all your treatment courts in Oklahoma, is that correct?
That plus, it's a little broader than that. So I oversee all of our treatment courts, which of course includes veterans courts, mental health courts, drug courts, DUI courts. And then I also oversee our prison reentry program, our officer CIT training program, and the diversion programs, some pretrial diversion, juvenile diversion programs. About the only treatment court that doesn't fall under my purview is the family treatment courts, and those are a different division at ODMH.
Well, that's quite a big plate that you have to deal with. So why don't you start by telling me a little about yourself?
Sure. So my background was in a different profession for 20 years. And then...
all right, you got to tell me the profession.
Okay. I was actually in the ministry for 20 years.
Okay.
And then life took a little turn and didn't really expect. And I ended up being a single mom and decided I wanted to get a career that paid better and I could support my family better. And so I had always been interested in going to law school. And so I chose that. It was that or organizational leadership doctorate, because I already had a master's degree. And I went ahead and took the LSAT and got a outstanding scholarship to attend the University of Tulsa College of Law.
Okay.
So I went there as a single mom, and I did an internship at the PD's office, did an internship at the district attorney's office, and ended up falling in love with that work. And so right after graduation, I went on the felony trial team.
At the prosecutor's office?
As a prosecutor.
In Oklahoma City?
Tulsa County. Tulsa County. And served as a prosecutor for several years. And my last 5 years there, I was the director of alternative courts. And I fell in love with that. Then I served for a couple years as the program director of the Tulsa County Courts, and then a couple years with NADCP. I worked with the Justice for Vets Division.
Okay.
And I had a ball for the first year traveling all over, and then this little thing called COVID hit, and and then we went virtual. And then the state opened a position, and they contacted me if I would want to apply. It sounded like a great fit. I was able to go back to my home state and serve there. And so that's what brought me back to Oklahoma.
And how long have you been in this position?
I have been with the department for 2.5 years, and I was promoted to this position about 1.5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a history.
It's been fun. And what's been great is I've seen kind of the treatment court world from every angle, a lot of angles. I was on the legal side, I was a prosecutor on the team, then I was the program director of a county overseeing the administrative part of it, and then the training arm with Justice for Vets. So seen a lot of angles of it, and I think that's what prepared me for the job that I have now.
I was going to ask you how you got involved in treatment courts, but it's pretty clear how you got involved. You were a prosecutor involved in the team. You've worked at NADCP, and now you're running it for the whole state. So I think that's a fairly clear layout. So how do you work with treatment courts in Oklahoma?
So my job is overseeing a team that does a lot with treatment courts. So we have training, we have technical assistance, we have 4 field reps that are assigned to regions of the state. 3 field reps concentrate on the adult drug court and veterans treatment court side of things. And then I have 1 field rep who specializes in the juvenile drug court and the mental health courts. They provide training and technical assistance to those courts. We do what we call evaluations. I hate to use that word, but we go in and look at their policy and procedure manuals, observe their court staffing as aligned to best practices. And then if they aren't maybe able to meet the goal of a best practice, or their policy and procedure manual needs a little work, our field reps work with them to provide maybe a copy of a policy procedure manual that might give them us ideas of how to do it, how to write it better. And so I oversee a staff that provides a lot of services to all of our treatment courts, and then I'm always available. I go train courts, I visit with judges, I'm there if needed for any reason.
That's really great. And do you guys put on an annual conference?
We sure do. So it's changing a little bit this year. In the past, it has been just the Justice and Recovery Conference, which was great. It was concentrated on our treatment courts and diversion programs. But ODMH, SAS, Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, which is very long, we have a huge agency, right? So
Right.
we have housing, addiction specialists. We have a treatment side of the house. We have CWICs for employment. We have a huge group of experts and a lot of divisions. So what they decided this year was to combine several smaller conferences and make a children's behavioral health conference and then an adult behavioral health conference. So we're getting we're pulled into that, which is good because it will give all of our treatment court practitioners not only information at the conference about treatment courts and treatment court models, but they will have access to all of the sessions that are going on for addiction specialists, for MAT, for mental health, help and behavioral health issues. So they will have a breadth, and that's going to be in December this year. Hopefully next year we'll be able to kick it back to the fall, where our Justice and Recovery Conference has always been, but it's a big conference.
Well, I know associates and partners of mine have been to your conference and enjoyed it a great deal. So,
good.
We know you put on an excellent conference. How do people find out about where it is and when it is?
So several ways. First of all, our field reps are the direct connection. So they will let their judges and coordinators know. They will send out information. We have a whole HRD team at the agency, and they will do save the date announcements, and then our website, it publishes all of our information.
If you go to the Department of Mental Health's website, on there you can find information on the conference.
Absolutely. And we actually have it's called the Training Institute on the website. And we're really stepping that up. They have been for a couple years. The Department of Mental Health wants to be the place that people go to when they need training and technical assistance about any behavioral health issues, treatment courts, all the divisions that we have.
So as I understand it, this is sort of like your folks in your treatment court be able to go to this larger conference. How many people do you expect?
I'm not sure, actually, because it's the first year we're combining it. We had a registration of about 400 at our Justice and Recovery Conference last year. Some of them attended in person, and some of them still came virtual, but that was around our registration. So I don't know what it will be with the combined conference.
Okay, all right. So when you do the conference, are your people going to be in tracks, or are they going to be able to just sign up to everything?
They'll be able to go to anything they want. We are just in the beginning stages of designing the program and brochures for that. And we're thinking about using some sort of color coding to highlight sessions that are more specific toward treatment courts.
We did that in Michigan.
Okay.
It worked very well.
Okay, good.
So later we can discuss that.
All right.
Besides the annual training, do you do other types of trainings?
Absolutely. So we have webinars at least once a month. Last year we tried to do 2 a month just because we were still coming out of COVID era. This year we have tried to do at least once a month, and we bring in people from NADCP, other CJI speakers to do webinars every month for anybody who wants to join. We also, of course, I go out and provide trainings to specific courts when they need something. And then we've been working with NADCP on that Training the Trainer project.
Right.
And we just trained I think it was about 15 practitioners across the field, judges, coordinators, prosecutors, defense counsel. Shane Wolf from NADCP came in. We trained them for a couple of days. So now we have a trained faculty pool that if one of our field reps has a court that, let's say, needs specific training on team roles, we can pull one of those practitioners that are actually in the field to go and help one of their fellow courts in the state with a training. So very individualized, very court specific. Some of our teams also sign up for the NADCP, like operational tune-ups, things like that. So we have quite the breadth of training. Plus, everyone can always sign up for all the trainings that ODMH offers. So it might not be coming specifically out of the criminal justice division. So it may be the prevention side of the house talking about suicide prevention, or the treatment side of the house having a session on MAT, things like that. They can take advantage of any of those.
So how do you fund treatment courts in your state?
So we have several ways. First of all, we have legislative dollars, state appropriated dollars that fund a lot. We have grants for reentry programs. We have some BJA grants for drug court infrastructure. The pandemic response grant is another way. Some of our counties, actually the county commissioners agree to fund some of the work in that specific county. And then we're really excited. Actually, I don't know if it's passed yet, but there's legislation about the 781 money. Because
781 money.
So a few years ago, Oklahoma passed what we called 780 and 781. 780 made all drug possession crimes misdemeanors. They used to, depending on how many times or the type of drug, they used to be felonies. It made all possession crimes misdemeanors. The goal was to save money from DOC. Part of that legislation that passed also had what we called 781, which was the funding of more treatment and more outreach based upon what the savings were for DOC.
Okay.
So
all right.
Then,
now that's unique.
Yeah.
And that's a good one. Interestingly, this is this creative way because Texas and New Mexico are funding their drug courts by tapping into liquor tax monies, which has created a great deal of funding. But this is unique and interesting. And the reason I'm sort of emphasizing it is we're trying to help people figure out ways to fund. So in this discussion, you guys have come up with an interesting new way, and that's interesting.
It is. And the savings that they're talking about have been phenomenal. So the legislation that is going through right now is formalizing the process of how the amount of funds gets determined each year, and then how those funds get distributed. And the legislation, the last I read it, as it stood, was that the money would be given to Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, and each county would be given an allotment determined by, I think it was the Legislative Office of Financial Transparency. They would each, based upon population, would be given a certain amount to use, and they turn in proposals for what they want to do in their county to reach those with substance use disorder and mental health issues in and out of the criminal justice system. So we're hoping each county really comes up with some innovative ideas to fill the gaps that they have in their specific county, and then they turn in we send out a request for a proposal, they turn in the proposals, and that money is all coming from 781.
All right, that's really interesting. So that leads to another question. I hope this isn't what you think is your greatest accomplishment in drug courts in Oklahoma, but if it is, I'd be interested in knowing that.
Gosh, our greatest accomplishment, I think, is the dedication of all the team members, whether they're rural or urban.
So you're talking about everybody who works?
Everybody. Because it's really tough sometimes, especially in our real rural areas. Yep. There's a resource desert, there's transportation issues, and we have judges and coordinators and treatment providers and everyone that are so committed to keep these programs going. And we've had what I called the perfect storm, not in a good way, over the last 3 years, or longer than that. First of all, we had 780 and 781. Our drug courts can only serve felony offenders per statute. So we had 780 that made all drug possessions misdemeanors.
Right.
Then we had COVID hit, and then we had the McGirt decision.
What's the McGirt decision?
So the McGirt decision was a Supreme Court decision that said that tribes are still sovereign nations.
Right.
And
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was thinking you had a state Supreme Court decision as opposed to the federal Supreme Court decision that essentially said that tribal areas are sovereign in terms of prosecution.
Exactly. So a lot of people that used to be in our state drug courts now fall under the tribal court and that McGirt decision. So our drug court population fell significantly over the last few years. However, we also increased all the other avenues to reach people. So even though we had all those things against us, our overall outreach to people in the criminal justice system, whether it's through diversion or mental health court or whatever it is, we actually rose a little bit. It wasn't great, but it rose by a percentage over the last few years, even with all those things that affected drug court.
Do you work with the tribal drug courts?
We are
tribal wellness court.
We have a tribal liaison at ODMH, and he is working with making sure that we are providing any support we can. If there's any way to work out participants participating in our programs, we are in collaboration with them all the time. I do want to jump back for a second to what we're really proud of.
Okay.
One of, I think, our greatest accomplishments in the last couple years anyway, has been revamping how we reach misdemeanor offenders. Because, as I said, 780 made all drug possession misdemeanors. And for those of you who have been in the field a while, you know that we tried some misdemeanor drug courts. We tried the model of more of a drug court on misdemeanor offenders. It doesn't work. There's not enough motivation to go to court all the time, to test all the time for a misdemeanor offender. It doesn't affect their long-term livelihood like a felony does. Some of them are already felony offenders, and having a misdemeanor is like not that big a deal, all those things. So we revamped. Tulsa was our pilot program, and now we're expanding across the state. Totally, pretty much shut down the misdemeanor drug court, worked with the district attorney's office, who was so supportive, all of the stakeholders, and said, let's rework this. Let's make it a wraparound, case management intensive engagement program.
Okay.
They don't have to come back to court. The goal is to get them to engage with any community services that will better their life. So they take a needs assessment, and we find out, do they need housing, food security? Do they need treatment? What do they need? Better employment. Okay, better employment. We've got a good partnership with Goodwill for their vocational training and help in people getting a better job. Let's work with them. And so they connect right at court, usually through iPads and Zoom meetings with community providers for various needs. And they are engaging with community providers to better all those needs. And the initial data on it is outstanding on the engagement rate and how many are completing the program. And completion means you engaged with people to address the needs that were identified in your treatment plan and your case management plan. And we started with, give you a quick thing on data. Before we made the change, Tulsa County had about 17 participants in their misdemeanor drug court. And in the year before they revamped, 14 of them failed. 14 of the 17, because it's too much for someone facing a misdemeanor. Revamped, we now have over 200 participants in the misdemeanor program. And I don't know the exact figures, I could get them for you, but the engagement rate is phenomenal, and it's reducing the recidivism of those misdemeanor offenders because you're actually trying to get them better housing, food security, better jobs, all of those things.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how do you think problem-solving courts can be improved beyond that in your state?
So I think they can be improved by trying to stop the turnover. There's a lot of turnover with prosecutors, defense counsel, all those kind of things. I'm trying to get team members, maybe get them onboarded more effectively so that and get them into training more easily, more effectively, so that they stay engaged a longer period of time. Other than that, it's a constant improvement per jurisdiction. So one of them might be doing great on a lot of things, but they just haven't found the resources to test twice a week yet. So I think the more that we can individualize the help and the training and the technical assistance for each court, I think we will raise the bar for every court across the state.
So where do you see treatment courts in your state 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I see a huge increase in our veterans. We have a Veterans Treatment Court strategic plan going on. So I see a huge increase in the number of our Veterans Treatment Courts, or the number of courts having Veterans Treatment Court tracks, at least, because some of them are very rural and won't have enough for a full program. And then I see development of this early diversion, misdemeanor diversion, early diversion program across the state and really taking hold in every jurisdiction. And then another big one is we are just beginning to revamp our juvenile outreach. I think looking at the juvenile system from the sequential intercept mapping model, where can we touch juveniles at each intercept point, and how do we do that effectively? I think it's going to be a game changer for us on the juvenile side of things.
Right. I want to thank you for taking time to have this conversation.
Sure.
And I'd like to offer you the opportunity. Is there anything you'd like to share about treatment courts in your state that I haven't asked you about?
Gosh, not that I can think of.
I think I've done a decent job as an interviewer. And with that, I'd like to thank you for coming on Justice Speaks.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.